Get out of the way, Holmes!
A quiet farmer, a Union ambush, a trail of revenge that redefined the Western. But behind Clint Eastwood's masterpiece, nothing was simple. The director got fired by his own star. The author wasn't who everyone thought he was. And one scene, they shot it with real bullets flying past the actors' heads. These are 20 weird facts about the outlaw Josey Wales. And the bonus, a legendary actor nearly quit mid-shoot because of a single line he refused to say. Ride hard, this gets rough fast. Number 1. Clint Eastwood didn't start as the director. That job belonged to Philip Kaufman, the man who'd adapted the novel and spent months prepping the film. Kaufman had the vision, the script approval, and the studio's backing. But from day one on set, something felt wrong. Eastwood kept questioning shots, suggesting different angles, rewriting scenes without asking. At first, Kaufman thought it was collaboration. Then he realized it was a takeover. The crew started looking to Eastwood for direction instead of Kaufman. Camera operators waited for Clint's nod before rolling. Even the AD deferred to him between takes. Kaufman tried to push back, but the momentum had already shifted. After just a few days of filming, Warner Brothers made a call. Kaufman was out. Eastwood was in. No announcement, no drama, just a quiet shuffle. And Clint, he didn't apologize. He stepped into the director's chair like it had always been his and kept shooting. The betrayal left scars. Kaufman later said he felt ambushed, but Eastwood never looked back, because in his mind, the movie needed a different hand. And once he took control, he never let go again. Number 2. The Outlaw Josey Wales wasn't just based on a novel, it was based on a lie. The book, originally titled Gone to Texas, was written by a man named Forrest Carter, who presented himself as a Cherokee storyteller, preserving his heritage through fiction. His backstory was compelling, his voice authentic, and publishers loved the narrative. But years after the film's release, investigative journalists uncovered the truth. Forrest Carter was a fabrication. The real author was Asa Earl Carter, a former Ku Klux Klan member and speechwriter for segregationist Governor George Wallace. He'd written some of the most hateful rhetoric of the civil rights era, then disappeared and reinvented himself completely. By the time Hollywood discovered the book, Carter had buried his past so deep that even Eastwood didn't know. The novel itself wasn't overtly racist, but its author had a history drenched in violence and bigotry. When the truth surfaced, it shocked everyone involved. Some argued the art should be separated from the artist. Others felt betrayed. Eastwood never publicly commented on it, but the revelation cast a shadow over the film's legacy. Because how do you celebrate a story about honor and survival when the man who wrote it had spent years advocating for the opposite? The movie endured, but the truth, it never quite went away. Number 3. Chief Dan George wasn't supposed to survive the audition process. At 76 years old, he was considered too frail, too quiet, too risky for a physical Western shoot. Studio executives wanted someone younger, someone who could ride hard and handle long days in the heat. But Eastwood didn't care about age. He cared about presence. When Chief Dan George walked into the audition room, he didn't perform. He barely spoke. He just stood there, looked Eastwood in the eye, and let the silence do the talking. That was it. No speeches, no dramatic reading, no cowboy posturing. Just an old man who'd lived enough life to carry weight without saying a word. Eastwood cast him on the spot. And from that moment, Chief Dan George became the soul of the film. His character, Lone Waddy, delivered some of the most memorable lines in the movie with a dry, deadpan wit that cut through every scene. Between takes, he'd sit quietly, sometimes napping in his chair while the crew reset. He never complained, never rushed, never tried to steal focus. He just showed up, hit his marks, and left everyone around him better for it. When the film wrapped, Eastwood called him one of the finest actors he'd ever worked with. Not because of technique, but because of truth. And Chief Dan George, he just smiled and said, "Thank you." Number 4.
Not quite alone.
Sandra Locke wasn't the first choice for Laura Lee. The studio wanted a bigger name, someone with box office pull and Western credibility. But Eastwood had worked with Locke before and saw something others didn't. She wasn't a classic Western heroine. She was small, delicate, almost fragile on screen. But that vulnerability, it played perfectly against the violence surrounding her. Eastwood fought the studio hard, and eventually, they relented. Locke arrived on set nervous, unsure if she belonged in a film this gritty. She'd never fired a gun, never ridden a horse at full gallop, never spent weeks in the dirt and dust of location shooting. But Eastwood didn't baby her. He put her through the same paces as everyone else. Long days, physical scenes, no shortcuts, and slowly she found her footing. What made her performance work wasn't toughness, it was the contrast. In a world of hardened outlaws and killers, Laura Lee remained soft, human, breakable. She didn't have to become a gunslinger to belong, she just had to survive. And Locke played that survival with a quiet strength that made every moment she was on screen feel earned. By the end of the shoot, even the skeptical crew members admitted Eastwood had been right. She wasn't the obvious choice, but she was the right one. Number 5. The film's most iconic line almost didn't make it into the script. "Dyin' ain't much of a livin', boy." It's been quoted for decades, referenced in countless films, and immortalized as one of the great Western one-liners. But originally, the scene played differently. The confrontation was shorter, the dialogue more straightforward, less poetic. During rehearsal, Eastwood felt it was missing something. He pulled the writer aside and said the moment needed weight, something that stuck. They rewrote it on location, scribbling variations on scraps of paper between setups. Eastwood wanted a line that wasn't just tough, but philosophical. Something that captured Josey Wales as more than a killer, as someone who understood the cost of violence. When they landed on the final version, Eastwood delivered it cold, no emotion, no theatrics. Just a statement of fact. The crew didn't react much during the take, but when they watched dailies that night, the room went quiet. That single line changed the entire tone of the scene. It elevated Josey from revenge-driven outlaw to tragic anti-hero. And it did it with 8 words. Sometimes the smallest changes make the biggest impact. And in this case, a last-minute rewrite created a line that would outlive the film itself. Number 6.
Living these days, dying ain't much of a living, boy.
They filmed the river crossing scene with real danger. No safety nets, no stunt coordinators hovering with backup plans. Just actors on horses, crossing a fast-moving river with cameras rolling. The current was stronger than expected. The water was cold, murky, and unpredictable. Eastwood went first, testing the depth, feeling the pull of the water against his horse. It was rough, but manageable, so they sent the rest of the cast through. Chief Dan George struggled halfway across. His horse stumbled, and for a moment, it looked like both rider and animal might go under. The crew yelled to cut, but Eastwood waved them off. He rode back, grabbed the reins, and guided them both to shore. No one panicked, no one made it a big production. They just reset and kept shooting. That's how Eastwood directed. Minimal fuss, maximum trust. He believed if you wanted authentic Western filmmaking, you had to accept authentic Western risks. The final cut shows actors genuinely cold, genuinely struggling, genuinely uncertain. It wasn't Hollywood Polish. It was survival captured on camera. And that raw, unfiltered energy, it made every moment feel real because it was real. Controlled chaos with just enough danger to matter. Number 7. The entire town of Santo Rio was built from scratch in 3 weeks. Not a standing set, not a partial facade, a fully functional Western town constructed specifically for the film. Carpenters worked around the clock, hammering together saloons, storefronts, a general store, hitching posts, everything. The goal wasn't just to create a backdrop. Eastwood wanted a place that felt lived in, worn down, forgotten by time. So they aged the wood, kicked dirt into corners, broke windows, and let the desert sun bake it all into submission. When the cast arrived, it didn't feel like a movie set. It felt like stepping into 1868. Eastwood encouraged the actors to treat it like a real town. They'd wander the streets between takes, sit on porches, lean against posts. The more they inhabited the space, the more natural their performances became. By the time filming wrapped, the town had taken on a strange kind of life. Some crew members said it felt haunted, like ghosts had moved in. Eastwood just laughed. After the shoot ended, the studio wanted to preserve it for future westerns. But Eastwood refused. He said Santo Rio belonged to Josey Wales and no one else. So they tore it down, piece by piece, and let the desert reclaim the land. A town built for one story, then erased like it never existed. Number 8.
Well, not a hard man to track.
One of the film's most intense gunfights wasn't choreographed. at least not the way most action scenes are. Eastwood told his stunt team to load the guns, set the marks, and then let instinct take over. He didn't want rehearsed movements or pre-planned beats. He wanted chaos, improvisation, the kind of gunfight that felt desperate and unpredictable. So, when the cameras rolled, the actors drew, fired, and moved without a script. Eastwood barked directions between takes, faster, meaner, don't think, just react. Some takes were brilliant, others fell apart completely. But that messiness, it created something raw. The final edit mixed the best moments from multiple takes, cutting between angles that felt jagged and alive. Critics later praised the sequence for its realism, its lack of Hollywood choreography. They had no idea it was born from controlled disorder. Eastwood understood that violence doesn't follow a script. It erupts, it escalates, and it ends suddenly. So instead of polishing the fight into something clean, he let it stay rough. And that roughness made it unforgettable. Because when you watch Josey Wales fight, you're not watching a movie star perform. You're watching a man survive by pure instinct. And that instinct, it came from giving the actors just enough freedom to be dangerous. Number 9.
He lives by the gun.
The famous spitting scene, Josey's signature move throughout the film, wasn't in the original script. It was Eastwood's improvisation during the first week of shooting. Between takes, he'd been chewing tobacco to stay in character, and at one point, he just spat to the side without thinking. The DP noticed and suggested they work it into the film. Eastwood liked the idea. It gave Josey a physical tick, something visceral and unapologetic. So they started adding it to scenes, a quiet spit before a confrontation, a dismissive spit after a threat. Each one punctuated a moment without dialogue. What started as an accident became iconic. Audiences latched onto it immediately. It wasn't just a character quirk, it was a statement. Josey Wales didn't explain himself, didn't justify his actions. He just spat and moved on. The simplicity made it powerful. Over the years, that single gesture has been referenced, parodied, and imitated countless times. But it all started with Eastwood standing on a dusty set, chewing tobacco, and letting instinct guide the moment. Sometimes the most memorable choices aren't planned. They just happen, and when they do, you don't overthink it. You just let the camera roll and see what sticks. Number 10.
Leaves dead men wherever he goes.
The film's final showdown almost killed someone, not because of the stunts or the gunfire, but because of the heat. They shot the climactic scene in the middle of summer, in the desert, with temperatures pushing past 110 degrees. The actors wore heavy period costumes, layered leather, wool, thick boots. There was no air conditioning, no shade, no relief. Eastwood pushed through, refusing to stop even as crew members collapsed from heat exhaustion. He believed discomfort bred authenticity, and he wasn't wrong. You can see it in the final cut. The sweat isn't makeup, the exhaustion isn't acting, it's real. But halfway through the day, one of the supporting actors went down hard, dehydrated, overheated, barely conscious. Medics rushed in, packed him in ice, forced water down his throat. Eastwood called a break, the only one all day. When the actor recovered enough to stand, he wanted to keep going. Eastwood looked at him, shook his head, and sent him back to the trailer. They finished the scene without him, reshooting his parts later in cooler weather. But the moment served as a reminder. Eastwood's methods worked, but they came with a cost. And on that day, in that desert, they came dangerously close to paying too much. Number 11. The gun Clint Eastwood carried wasn't a prop. It was a genuine Civil War-era Colt Walker revolver, one of the most powerful handguns ever made in the 1800s. Eastwood insisted on authenticity, so the prop department tracked down actual period weapons instead of replicas. The Walker was massive, weighing over 4 pounds loaded, with a kick that could break an inexperienced shooter's wrist. Eastwood spent weeks before filming, practicing with it, learning its balance, its quirks, the way it pulled to the left when fired. He wanted every draw, every reload, every shot to look natural, lived in, and it showed. When you watch Josey Wales handle that gun, there's no hesitation, no awkwardness. He moves with it like it's part of his body. But the decision to use real weapons created problems. Modern safety regulations didn't exist the way they do now. Blank rounds were still dangerous at close range, and misfires happened more than once. During one scene, a blank discharge too close to an actor's face, singing his eyebrows and leaving powder burns on his cheek. Eastwood shut down filming for an hour, brought in a weapons expert, and redesigned the shot. He was willing to push boundaries, but he wasn't reckless. The guns stayed real, but the protocols got tighter. And when the film hit theaters, critics praised the authenticity of the gunplay without ever knowing how close it came to disaster. Because in Eastwood's world, real meant real, and he was willing to accept the consequences. Number 12. Will Sampson, who played 10 Bears, delivered his entire negotiation scene in one take. No rehearsal, no warm-up, just cameras rolling and 2 actors, facing off in the middle of nowhere. Eastwood had set the scene carefully. 2 leaders, 2 warriors, meeting on equal ground to decide if they'd kill each other or find peace. It was the moral heart of the film, and it had to feel unrehearsed, like real men negotiating real stakes. So Eastwood didn't block it traditionally. He just told Sampson and himself where to stand, let the cameras find them, and said go. The dialogue was minimal, but every word mattered. Sampson spoke with a quiet authority that commanded the screen. He wasn't acting like a chief, he was a chief. The tension held for minutes without a cut. 2 men sizing each other up, deciding if the other deserved respect or a bullet. When Sampson delivered his final line and turned to walk away, Eastwood didn't call cut. He just stood there, watching, letting the moment breathe. When the crew finally stopped rolling, nobody spoke. They knew they'd just witnessed something rare. Eastwood walked over to Sampson, shook his hand, and said, "That's the one." They shot coverage for safety, but Eastwood knew. That first take, unrehearsed and raw, was the take. And it became one of the most powerful scenes in the film, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Number 13. The film's score almost didn't happen. Jerry Fielding, the composer, clashed with Eastwood from day one. Fielding wanted a traditional Western score, big, sweeping, orchestral. Eastwood wanted something darker, more restrained, haunted. They argued in editing bays, over phone calls, through intermediaries. Fielding would send tracks, and Eastwood would reject them. Too loud, too Hollywood, too safe. At one point, Fielding threatened to quit. Eastwood told him to go ahead. The standoff lasted weeks until Fielding finally broke through Eastwood's wall. He composed a theme that wasn't heroic or triumphant. It was mournful, lonely, the sound of a man who'd lost everything and couldn't find his way back. When Eastwood heard it, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then he nodded and said, "That's Josey." Fielding had cracked the code. The rest of the score followed that template, sparse, melancholic, refusing to glorify the violence or romanticize the journey. When the film premiered, critics barely mentioned the music, and that was the point. Fielding's score didn't announce itself. It haunted the edges, supporting the story without overwhelming it. Years later, Eastwood admitted the fight had been worth it, because Fielding didn't give him what he asked for. He gave him what the film needed, and sometimes those are 2 very different things. Number 14. John Vernon, who played Fletcher, Josey's betrayer, was genuinely hated by the cast during filming, not because he was difficult, but because he was too good. Vernon stayed in character between takes, maintaining Fletcher's cold, calculating demeanor, even during lunch breaks. He'd eat alone, avoid eye contact, speak only when necessary. The rest of the cast found it unsettling. They'd try to joke with him, break the ice, and he'd just stare back with those empty eyes. Eastwood loved it. He encouraged Vernon to stay distant, to make everyone uncomfortable, because that discomfort, it bled into the performances. When Josey's men looked at Fletcher, they weren't acting betrayed. They felt betrayed. Vernon had created a wall between himself and everyone else, and it made every scene crackle with real tension. But it took a toll. By the end of the shoot, Vernon was exhausted, emotionally drained from carrying that darkness for months. On the final day of filming, he broke character for the first time, walked up to Eastwood and said, "I need a comedy next." Eastwood laughed and told him he'd earned it. Because Vernon had done something rare. He'd sacrificed his own comfort, his own relationships on set, to serve the story. And that kind of commitment, it's what separated good performances from unforgettable ones. Fletcher wasn't just a villain. He was a ghost that haunted the entire film. Number 15. The movie was nearly rated X. Not for violence, though there was plenty, but for a single scene involving sexual assault that pushed the boundaries of what 1970s audiences could handle. The MPAA flagged it immediately, demanding cuts or face the dreaded X rating that would kill the film's commercial prospects. Eastwood refused. He argued the scene wasn't gratuitous. It was necessary to show the brutal reality of the world Josey inhabited, the stakes women faced on the frontier. The ratings board pushed back harder. They wanted the scene removed entirely or shot from different angles to soften the impact. Eastwood didn't blink. He hired lawyers, prepared for a fight, and told Warner Brothers he'd release the film unrated if necessary. Behind the scenes, the studio panicked. An unrated Western would never play in major theaters, but Eastwood had leverage. The film was testing well, and they knew it could be a hit. After weeks of negotiation and minor trims that barely changed the scene, the MPAA relented and gave it an R rating. Eastwood had won, but it cost him political capital in Hollywood. Some executives called him difficult, uncompromising, obsessed with control. He didn't care, because to him, the film's integrity mattered more than industry relationships, and he proved that sometimes the only way to protect your vision is to be willing to burn bridges to defend it. Number 16. Sam Bottoms, who played Jamie, the young Confederate soldier, was only 19 during filming and completely out of his depth. He'd done a few small roles before, but nothing prepared him for working with Eastwood. The first day, Bottoms showed up overprepared, trying to impress with character choices and backstory ideas. Eastwood listened politely, then said, "Just say the lines and don't fall off your horse." Bottoms was crushed. He thought Eastwood hated him, but over time, he realized Eastwood wasn't being dismissive. He was teaching economy, stripping away everything unnecessary until only truth remained. Bottoms stopped trying to act and started just being. His performance became quieter, more genuine, more vulnerable. And in the scenes where Jamie dies, that vulnerability hit like a gut punch. It's one of the most heartbreaking moments in the film, not because of dialogue or music, but because Bottoms had learned to do less and feel more. After the film wrapped, Bottoms called Eastwood the best teacher he'd ever had, even though Eastwood barely gave direction, because sometimes the best lesson isn't what to do, it's what not to do. And Bottoms carried that lesson through the rest of his career, always remembering the director who taught him that great acting isn't about showing everything. It's about trusting the audience to see what's underneath. Simple, honest, and completely devastating when it needs to be. Number 17. They shot the farm burning sequence using a real homestead, not a set, not a controlled burn, an actual abandoned property that Eastwood's location scout found in rural Arizona. The owners had given up on it years earlier, and the land was scheduled for clearing anyway. So Eastwood made a deal. They'd buy the property, burn it for the film, and pay for the cleanup. But once the cameras rolled, things escalated fast. The fire was supposed to be contained, manageable, with fire crews standing by. But the wind shifted. The flames spread faster than anticipated, jumping from the house to the surrounding brush. What was supposed to be a controlled burn became a genuine wildfire. The crew evacuated, fire trucks rushed in. For 3 hours, it looked like they'd lost control completely and might burn half the county. Eventually, firefighters contained it, but not before scorching acres beyond the planned zone. Eastwood stood watching, silent, as smoke billowed into the sky. Someone asked if he got the shot. He nodded. They had it, every frame. The terror on the actors' faces wasn't performance. It was real fear as the fire roared out of control around them. The studio was furious about the risk, the cost, the potential lawsuits. But Eastwood didn't apologize. He said, "If you want to capture real devastation, you have to risk real disaster." And that scene, it became one of the film's most visually stunning moments, because it wasn't movie magic. It was chaos, barely contained. Number 18. Paula Truman, who played Grandma Sarah, was 81 during filming and nearly got fired 3 times. Not for performance issues, but because she kept rewriting her own lines. Eastwood would call action, and Truman would deliver something completely different from the script, adding sass, changing rhythms, throwing in improvised insults. The script supervisor would stop filming, pointing out the deviations. Eastwood would sigh and reset. But after the 3rd scene where Truman went rogue, something shifted. Eastwood realized her instincts were better than what was written. She understood Grandma Sarah as a woman who'd survived decades of frontier hardship and wasn't about to be polite about it. So Eastwood made a deal. She could improvise, but she had to nail it in 1 or 2 takes. No endless experimenting. Truman agreed, and suddenly her character exploded to life. Every scene she appeared in crackled with unpredictable energy. She'd insult Josey, mock the other characters, deliver wisdom wrapped in barbs. The other actors never knew what she'd say, so their reactions were genuine surprise. By the end of filming, Eastwood admitted she'd made the character infinitely better than what he'd originally envisioned. Because Truman didn't just play Grandma Sarah, she became her. And she proved that sometimes the best direction is knowing when to get out of an actor's way and let them cook. Number 19. The film's ending was reshot 4 times before Eastwood was satisfied. The original cut had Josey riding off alone into the sunset, classic Western farewell. Test audiences hated it. They said after everything Josey had been through, leaving him isolated felt hollow, unsatisfying. So Eastwood went back, recut it to show him staying with the makeshift family he'd built. Better, but still not right. Something about the tone felt forced, too sentimental for a character who'd spent 2 hours killing his way across the frontier. Third attempt, he tried voiceover, Josey reflecting on peace and violence. Worse, way worse. Eastwood scrapped it immediately. By the 4th version, he'd stripped everything down to its essence. No speeches, no grand gestures. Just Josey choosing to stay. Not because he'd found redemption, but because he was tired of running. A quiet moment, understated, perfectly in character. That's the version that made it to theaters. And critics praised the ending for its restraint, having no idea Eastwood had wrestled with it for months. Because endings are the hardest part of any story. They have to earn everything that came before without over-explaining or under-delivering. Eastwood understood that Josey Wales wasn't a man who changed. He was a man who finally stopped. And that subtle distinction made all the difference between an ending that worked and one that didn't. Number 20. By the time the Outlaw Josey Wales wrapped, Eastwood had directed himself through one of the most physically and emotionally exhausting shoots of his career. He'd fired the original director, fought the studio, pushed his cast to breaking points, risked real danger, and refused to compromise on his vision. When the final cut was locked, Warner Brothers executives watched it in nervous silence. It was too violent for some, too slow for others, too uncommercial for the mainstream. They predicted modest returns at best. Maybe a cult following if it was lucky. Then it hit theaters, and audiences showed up in waves. The film made over $30 million domestically. A massive success for a hard-edged Western in an era when the genre was supposedly dead. Critics called it Eastwood's masterpiece, a film that transcended revenge fantasy to become something deeper, more contemplative. It earned an Oscar nomination, cemented Eastwood as a serious director, and proved he could do more than just squint and shoot. But for Eastwood, the real victory wasn't the money or the accolades. It was proving that his instincts, his stubbornness, his refusal to play it safe, had been right all along. The Outlaw Josey Wales wasn't just a Western. It was a statement that Eastwood could make films his way, on his terms, and audiences would follow. And from that point forward, he never looked back. Bonus fact. Royal Dano, the veteran character actor who played the carpetbagger, almost walked off set over a single line of dialogue. The script had him delivering a speech mocking Confederate soldiers, calling them traitors and cowards. Dano, whose father had fought for the South, refused. He told Eastwood the line felt cheap, designed to get easy villain points without depth. Eastwood listened, then asked what Dano would say instead. Dano suggested making the character believe he was righteous, that he genuinely thought he was bringing civilization to the defeated South, even if his methods were cruel. Eastwood rewrote the scene on the spot, keeping the character's villainy but adding layers of self-justification. Dano delivered it cold, convinced of his own moral superiority, and it made the character infinitely more chilling. Because the scariest villains aren't the ones who know they're evil, they're the ones who think they're heroes. After the scene wrapped, Dano thanked Eastwood for listening. Eastwood just shrugged and said, "Good actors know their characters better than anyone." And in that moment, Dano understood why crews would follow Eastwood into hell. Not because he was always right, but because he was willing to be wrong if it made the film better.